3 lifelong friends, 6 trusty balls, and endless NFL takes. Welcome to 3 Guys, 6 Balls NFL Podcast.
Welcome to episode 47 of 3 Guys, 6 Balls NFL Podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and I'm here with my co-host, Will. Avery is not joining us today because he is in the process of moving to Vegas. He missed Mark Davis's haircut so much that he wanted to move back. So he is moving this week, so he's not with us, but hopefully he'll be back with us next week. How are you doing today, Will? How are you doing after that conference championship game? How are you holding up?
Oh, man. We're just going to start with this. That's fine. I'm doing. Okay, so
you're doing great.
never.
All right,
Hold on. I was expecting to get into this. I was not expecting to get into this right off the rip. I have not fully collected my thoughts here for show worthy, but I know what I want to say. So I, as known by our 8 watchers, I grew up a Dallas fan. Dallas Cowboys were my life for the first 31 and whatever amount of my life. It was Dallas Cowboys through and through. I bled blue and silver. I then made an adult choice to change teams and picked. When did we pick our new teams? It was before Christmas. It was well before Christmas too. Like that was early in the season.
It was the week of, I think it was week 5. I think it was week 5 because it was the week that the Eagles beat the Bucks. I remember that.
Okay.
So we recorded that episode after that week had happened.
Right. Okay. So yeah, early in the season, right? Week 5, there's still 12 weeks left in the season. I and my family, except for my son as noted here, picked the Rams. And then the Rams go on, and all they do is have who's going to be hopefully the MVP of the league as their quarterback, who's got a very strong contender for Offensive Player of the Year. They've got a coach that should be in consideration for Coach of the Year, but this is just what's expected, and so he's not going to be in consideration for it because it's just expected now. And so they've got that going for him. They made an NFC Championship run. This is nothing I've ever experienced in my life before. The anticipation, the Cowboys made the divisional round more than one time when I was an active football fan. I think at least one time. So I experienced that before. But winning that game and moving to the conference championship game is not something I've ever experienced in my active adult, I'm a football watcher life. And so that entire week from Bears and the highs and lows of that Bears game, the 4th and 4 from the 14-yard line when Caleb Williams threw that 52-yard pass into the end zone to tie the ball game with under a minute left, the highs and lows of that game left me a bit hungover for the week and such high anticipation. The Rams games throughout the season had been such, again, high emotional games, highs and lows, with the backwards pass that led to the 2-point conversion that then went on to them winning. That there was just a series of tough fought football games right there that all culminated at the end where it was Rams Seahawks again, the conference championships game. And I let myself believe that, okay, the Seahawks, they had a bye week, and they had a second bye week with the 49ers. That Rashid Shaheed took the opening kickoff back, then they scored the extra point, and they didn't need to score any more points. But what did the Seahawks do? They did the exact opposite of the Falcons in the Super Bowl. They kept the foot on the gas pedal. They kept going. They did not stop. Relentless, that Seahawks team was throughout that entire game. And I think that is a key moment as to why they were able to persevere through and beat the Rams. I think had they just coasted through, okay, well, we're up. I don't know what the score was at halftime of that game, but we're up big at halftime. We're just going to play to not lose. And playing to not lose, I think, still beats the 49ers. But because they didn't, Mike McDonald went ahead and said, no, we're gonna make it hurt. This is a division rival. We're gonna make this hurt. And they did. And then I think that all fine-tuned the element to when they got to the Rams game, they were ready. This Rams team had a hard-fought Panthers game in the playoffs. They had a hard-fought Bears game in the playoffs. They came in round 3 after 2 hard-fought regular season games against the Seahawks to what was going to be the NFC Championship. I think that is going to be a better game than the Super Bowl is going to be. I mean, it's been said before a lot of times. I think the same case can be made for, say, the Seahawks against the Broncos Super Bowl, right? Unless you're a Seahawks fan, that Super Bowl was kind of dookie. That first snap went over Peyton Manning's head, and then it was a safety, and then it was just relentless from there. I mean, it was just rough. And he was like, this isn't even entertaining from football anymore unless you're a Seahawks fan. But I do believe the NFC Championship game was a hard-fought game. The Seahawks came down to the wire to win. Now, I could be remembering that wrong, but that's how I remember it. And that's how I'm going to remember this, too, because I don't give and this is spoiler alert here, we're going to talk about this next week, I think. I don't give the Patriots much chance here. I don't think anybody's giving the Patriots much chance here. The opening line was 4.5 points in favor of the Seahawks. Like, they're already more than the field goal favorite in the Super Bowl. And so, going back to your original question of how am I doing after the NFC Championship game, I'm doing good because I think, amidst all the controversy, I actually think the better team won that game. I think, and I've said it so many times, that Rams secondary is abysmal. That Rams secondary is so bad. Oh man, they gave up so many yards to the Panthers in the playoffs. They let up a 4th and 4 52-yard pass from the 14-yard line to Caleb Williams and Cole Kmet. Like they just let up passes. And when you're playing elite wide receivers such as JSN this year and Cooper Kupp has been in the past, that doesn't just go away. Sure, your skills and ability fade, but he is still a top caliber wide receiver just to have on your team because of what he can do. You have to respect him through and through. I mean, he won the Triple Crown, God darn it. And they didn't let anybody forget about it when watching the NFC Championship game. It's, oh yeah, former Rams Super Bowl MVP, now for the Seahawks. Dude, he made a 3-yard catch. Can we just not say that every time he touches the ball? Can we pick something else besides him?
They pound that stuff. Like during the last game of the season with the Bucs and Panthers, I cannot tell you how many times I heard them say, well, if the Saints win this game, then the Bucs go to the playoffs. And if the Falcons win this game, then the Panthers go to the playoffs. Literally about 1,000 times, I'm sure they said it throughout the game. Like, how many times do you guys have to say this? We already know.
Right.
That and that and glazing Patrick Mahomes.
Well,
in every single game.
Yeah. Well, that or Josh Allen, who's in. So yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good. It's bittersweet because my son has decided he's a Seahawks fan. So it's really cool that in the first year of my son liking football, his team is going to the Super Bowl, and he did pick them during the regular season. And he, as I mentioned out here, only picked them because it was a team I was going against. So he just naturally picked opposing me rather than for me, which is fine. Boys will be boys. It's cool for him. His first year, his team gets to go to the Super Bowl. But I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So there's that. There's that whole monologue about how I'm doing and my take on the NFC Championship game. I've got more thoughts, but I feel like we'll dive into it later. I'm just stealing the show here.
Oh, you're good. The more you talk, the less I have to. So feel free. But yeah, I don't really have much thoughts on the Rams and Seahawks game aside from that, other than just it was a fun game to watch. That's all I'll say. So let's move on to Patriots at Broncos, though. We'll just cover that game real quick.
Okay, hold on.
We'll get
all right, if we're talking about the games, I've got some more questions here. I've got some more takes. I've got some more questions before we move on.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp didn't catch that ball.
He did. He did catch it.
He did not catch that ball.
He did. 100%. He caught it.
He did not catch that ball. If he caught that ball, Brandon Cooks caught the ball, and it was not an interception.
No.
So
because Brandon Cooks did not make
okay. Pause
the game.
Pause. This is I kind of wish Avery was here for this because we were on opposite sides of this, but I'm good going toe to toe right here with you. Okay, so what was the football move that Cooper Kupp made?
Well, there's two that you could say. He was hit in stride, so he was running when he caught the ball, and then he was tackled.
So was Brandon Cooks.
He took a step, and
then Brandon Cooks.
But Cooks was in the air. So he couldn't take a step because he was in the air. Cooper Kupp was on the ground.
2 feet down. He got 2 feet down on his way to the ground.
But getting 2 feet down doesn't count unless you're on the sideline. Then you have to control the ball. It's different. Cooper Kupp was in stride, so he took an additional step when he was getting tackled. He also extended the ball to try and get the first down, which is an act common to the game.
Okay,
Brandon Cooks did not do that.
Okay, hold on though, because in my opinion, and I already had this argument with Kirk today, so I'm willing to keep having it because I feel like if one is going to be true, then both have to be true. Conveniently, I have a football right here. It's very flat, obviously, as you can tell, very dented in. DeMarcus Ware signed it. I probably shouldn't be touching it, but here we are. If extending the football is an act, then tucking the football in should also be an act common to the game. Gaining possession, because the argument Kirk made was that when you extend the ball, you have you're ending your catch and you have possession, and you are now making a football move. Okay, but when you catch the ball and are tucking it, you are ending your catch, maintaining possession, and bringing the ball into your body. But when somebody is tucking the ball in and it gets hit out, that is not a catch. That is an incomplete pass. So if you extend the ball, that can't possibly be a catch because extending the ball and tucking the ball are exact inverses. You are moving the ball either closer to or further away from your body after you have made the catch and secured possession. You are now adjusting the position of the ball. That's all you're doing is adjusting the position, either further away from your body or closer to. Additionally, when he went down, that ball was not across the first down line. And it is not like
that is true. That part I agree with.
It is not the goal line. It does not count when it just crosses the line and then comes back. It is not the goal line. And unless that ball was pushed backwards by a defender, bringing that ball back by yourself is not forward progress. You can run backwards all you want if you're not touched. This is why Dan Orlovsky ran out of the back of the end zone and it was called a safety because he was untouched and ran backwards out of the back of the end zone. That is not forward progress on the 1 yard line. He brought that ball back on his own and it was no longer across the first down. So the fact that McVay had to burn a timeout, I agree with that because if the clock is running and you want to speak to a referee, it is your responsibility to use a timeout. That I agree with. But it looked like the explanation he got was that he can't challenge it without using his other timeout. And who on earth would do that? I'm not going to possibly challenge this and possibly lose my other timeout. And so he didn't get his timeout back. They didn't let him challenge it. They didn't expeditedly review it, although I feel like they probably should have done that too. Very crucial call. Give it the expedited review in the booth. And then let's all just, okay, after expedited review, confirmed first down, and then whatever. So I feel like that play was very mismanaged by the NFL because of how controversial, these catches in the playoffs have been.
Once again, we're brought right back to the officiating sucks.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I don't mind saying it again. The referee's contract is up. They have one more game. There's one more referee crew, and then the NFL referee's contract is up. If you are in your contract year, at the pinnacle of it, you are at the very end of it, there are 2 games on TV, and both of them are on separate times, and America is going to be watching, well, those that watch football are going to be watching each of those games individually. All eyes are on you. There's no red zone channel where you're just flipping through every single game the entire day. This is it. And so you would think you would be putting better tape out there. Hey, look at how good we're doing. Hey, look at how consistent we are. Look at how good we are over here. I'm scared for the Super Bowl for the referees because these guys are going to be on absolute, I don't want to say death threats. That's not the right thing, but they're going to be, people are going to be watching them like a hawk. That's going to be crazy. That is scrutiny. That's the word. The scrutiny these referees are going to be under the entire Super Bowl. Any bad call.
Not as much scrutiny as the performer in the halftime show will be under.
That's absolutely true. I just think people won't pay attention to him. That's what I think. Like if I was paying tens of thousands of dollars for a commercial, I would make sure it was not during the halftime show because I have no interest in watching it, and that's a me thing. Either. It's not my style of music. I'm not a big hip hop fan of any genre, whether it's I think he's Brazilian. Is that right? I know Spanish. I truly don't know.
I don't really know either. I don't listen to Bad Bunny. I don't like his music at
So
all.
yeah, oof. But the difference there, Joe, is that Bad Bunny does not, I think, have an effect on the outcome of the game. The referees make that same call on 3rd and 8 with 3:15 left in the game and a 4-point game in the Super Bowl when the Seahawks are down and they go to lose to the Patriots. Let's just say the entire Pacific Northwest would be like, these guys are to blame. Or we had a good enough team, these guys are to blame. I just, given the scenario, I feel like they should have given it more of a look. Again, and this is 2 weeks in a row we're saying that. They should have taken longer to review it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, do you have any specific thoughts on Patriots and Broncos real quick, or do you want me to just go since you've been talking for 15 minutes? Or
yeah, you can go. You can go.
I'm like, I want to talk now. I said I didn't want to before, but now I do.
Play the stock.
So really the only thought that I have on this game is what I said last week about Jarrett Stidham being compared to Nick Foles for the 2017 Eagles was 100% correct. Not the same thing. And you saw it with his inexperience. With Stidham's inexperience, I don't think if you have an experienced quarterback in that game, whether it's Bo Nix or Nick Foles or somebody else, that he makes that dumb turnover that led to the only touchdown for the Patriots. His inexperience showed in that play. And so I think if you take that Nick Foles from 2017, who had 36 starts, he's not making that play. But a guy who hasn't started in 2 years, hasn't thrown a pass in 2 years, has 4 career starts, he makes that play. So what I said about his inexperience versus Nick Foles' experience in 2017, it showed in that game. And ultimately it cost the Broncos the game. So that's all I have to say. But if you have any other thoughts, go ahead.
A couple things here. I mean, Will Lutz going 0 for 2 from field goal. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Now, Borregales went 1 for 3. So, like, you both missed 2 field goals, but the weather was bad. All right, sure. Will Lutz, you play in Denver. You should be better at this. Additionally, Drake May put up another sub 50% passer completion percentage in that game. He was 10 for 21. This guy, Drake May, has been bad in the playoffs. I don't even know how else to say it. He has not been the same regular season Drake May. And I think it comes down to inexperience and just being maybe uncomfortable in the playoffs because he hasn't been there before. And I think we're going to, and the fact that he has played 2 top 5 defenses in a row with the Texans and then the Broncos. And the problem is he's also going up against the top 5 defense again in the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. I expect more of the same. He had 86 passing yards in the Super Bowl, or in the NFC Championship game. He was 10 for 21, 86 yards. He took 5 sacks for 21 yards. Now, additionally, he did scramble 10 times for 65 yards. That's pretty good, and he got a touchdown out of it. But I don't think the Seahawks are going to give up the same areas. I think that defense is just better. I don't like the Patriots' chances in the Super Bowl.
Stop giving it all away before we talk about it.
No. I like to repeat myself, so it's fine to say it again.
All right. Well, anyways, the NFL revealed the NFL award finalists this week. And so what Will and I are going to do today is talk about not all of the awards, but we're going to talk about maybe 3 or 4 of the awards. And we're going to make for and against cases for some of the candidates for these awards. And when I say some of the candidates, I mean each award has 5 finalists. We narrowed it down to 2 finalists for MVP and 3 for Offensive Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. And then we might get to offensive and defensive rookies, but we're going to for sure do MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Defensive Player of the Year. And so we've narrowed it down to a more select group. We're going to make a case for these guys and against these guys. And then we'll give our predictions for who wins the award at the end of each award. So to start, we'll start with MVP. So the finalists for this award are Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Christian McCaffrey, Drake May, and Matthew Stafford. Will and I narrowed it down to Matthew Stafford and Drake May. I feel like nobody would have a problem with that. I feel like everybody knows it's those two guys and nobody else even has a chance. So Will, actually, before we start this, for anybody listening, please remember that these awards are based off of the regular season. Before you get upset at anything we say, these are regular season awards. The playoffs has nothing to do with these awards. So no, Sam Darnold will not be MVP because he's in the Super Bowl, okay? It's just, sorry, Seahawks fans, that's just not how it works. So, Will, you can start, make your case for and against Matthew Stafford.
Matthew Stafford, my guy, my new guy, I guess I should say. Heck of a season, right? He went on a, was it 5-6 game run, something like that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game run without throwing a single interception. Season stats this year: completed 388 passes on 597 attempts, just over 4,700 yards, 46 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He led the league in passing, I do believe. That is accurate.
He did. He led the league in passing yards, yes. He also led the league with touchdown passes with 46.
Yeah,
which nobody else was even
guy,
close to, by the way.
Right. He is, there it is. Led the league in passing yards, was top. See, here's the other problem with these awards and trying to find stats, is that when you look it up, anybody who's throwing a single pass starts skewing numbers. So, he had 32 yard average. Okay, he threw one pass. Can I get a 110 minimum here, please? Anyway, so led the league in passing yards, led the league in touchdowns. And I don't know what the number is statistically, but usually when a guy's doing that, they're going to end up winning MVP. Like that's all the NFL cares about right now is who's doing the best in the quarterback position, and doing the best currently means most yards, most touchdowns, and least amount of turnovers. Now, Stafford didn't have the least amount of turnovers. Actually, even Caleb Williams threw less interceptions than Matthew Stafford this year. But
was that
with
hard
8
for you to
interceptions,
say, Will?
No, it's factually accurate. Jordan Love also threw less. Jalen Hurts also threw less. So he actually threw less interceptions on more attempts. So there's nothing to complain about there. Whatever. But I just, you watch the games, you watch the competition, you watch this man run his team. There's just no other way to do it, right? He commanded the offense. He was up against hard competition. He put his players in the right position to make the plays they needed to make. The one drawback he has going for him is he doesn't run the football. Now, if you only watch the NFC Championship game, you would disagree with that fact, because he had a couple, I think he had 2 good scrambles in the NFC Championship game, crushed the over for his rushing yards for sure, but he doesn't have the same, I know he had, during the regular season, he had 1 single rushing yard on the whole season.
Oh, yeah.
So he doesn't have that to back it up, doesn't have the rushing touchdowns. He doesn't get the 1-yard touch pushes that Josh Allen gets or that Jalen Hurts get. He doesn't run the football like Josh Allen or even Drake May. So that is a drawback. But I think when it comes down to pure numbers, throwing the football wise, there's no one better than Matthew Stafford. And the fact that he's doing it at 37 years old and doesn't show signs of slowing down currently, especially when, if you remember, to begin the season, there was thoughts if he was even going to be able to play this year. Hey, he's got back problems. We're going to see a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo this year with the Rams, and that just didn't happen. He played every game. I don't know if he played every snap, but he played every game and was there in and out. So I also think his 8-game stretch of 0 interceptions, and he had some unreal amount of touchdowns during that time. I could do the math here if we really wanted me to. 3, 5, 8, 10, 14, 18, and 5 is 23, 24, 27, 30 touchdowns, no picks in that stretch. That's really good. That's really good by all accounts. So, and then to finish it off, week 18, he had another no interception game. He only had 5 interceptions, 5 games of interceptions in the season. His major drawback's going to be against the Falcons. They lost the last 2 games of the season. which was not great against two of the last 3 games of the season against the Seahawks and the Falcons. In that Week 17 game against the Falcons, he did end up throwing 3 picks that game. So he's got some major drawbacks in recency when it comes to voting. It's like, what have you done for me lately? You look at his Week 17 game against the Falcons, it was not great, but the rest of his season, pretty good. Pretty good, if I do say so myself.
I agree. Before I say my for and against case here for Matthew Stafford, I just want everybody to know when I make my against case, I really tried hard to find things to say against not only Matthew Stafford, but all of these guys. Like, I really spent a lot of time, like way more time than I should have, to find an against case for these guys. So when I say these things, don't think that I'm hating on Matthew Stafford. It's just I spent a lot of time just trying to find something to put in the against category. So we already kind of talked about it. For Matthew Stafford, the reason why he should win MVP is because he led the league in passing yards and he led the league in passing touchdowns with 46, which nobody else was even close to. I believe the next guy was Jared Goff, who had 34 touchdowns passing, I believe. So
correct.
Nobody else was even close to Matthew Stafford when it comes to passing touchdowns. So there's the for case. Against Matthew Stafford, his completion percentage wasn't even in the top 15. He had a worse completion percentage than guys like Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, and Geno Smith. And then we've seen this before from Matthew Stafford, right? Although this is the most touchdown passes he's ever thrown, we've seen Stafford throw 40-plus touchdowns in 2 different seasons before this. And we've also seen him throw for more yards than he threw this season 3 different times before. The reason why I say that is because when you look at Drake May, this is the first time that we've seen this level of play from Drake May. And so it's new and it's exciting. Everybody knows that Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they knew that before this season. They knew that going in. They knew that the Rams would be contenders because they have Matthew Stafford on the field. They've seen this before from Matthew Stafford. We have not seen this from Drake May prior to this season. And so I think that goes in Drake May's favor versus Matthew Stafford when it comes to MVP voting, because a lot of it is a popularity contest. Let's be honest. It's a popularity contest, and Drake May is the more exciting player because he not only does it through the air, but he does it on the ground as well, which Matthew Stafford does not do unless you're in the conference championship against the Seahawks. So that's my against case for Matthew Stafford. Now, let's get into Drake May, unless, Will, you have anything else to add there?
I do not.
Okay, cool. So I'll start on Drake May. The for case for Drake May, he had the highest completion percentage during the regular season in the league with 72%. He had a total of 4,846 yards, which is more than Stafford. He had 4,394 passing yards. He had 450 rushing yards. He also had 2 receiving yards. So Matthew Stafford doesn't do the receiving aspect like Drake May does, okay? So also he had the highest average yards per pass attempt with 8.9. He had the highest passer rating in the league with 113.5, and he had the highest adjusted QBR at 77.1. Also, the Patriots had a better record than the Rams. So if you're voting for MVP and you're looking at all this stuff that Drake May did, not only is it more exciting than what Matthew Stafford is doing because we haven't seen it from Drake May before and we have seen it from Stafford, but he's got all these numbers to back it up. The completion percentage, the passer rating, the adjusted QBR, the record, he's got all that stuff over Matthew Stafford. My against case is kind of short for Drake May, but I would say that he only had a total of 35 touchdowns compared to Matthew Stafford's 46. So Stafford may not have the yards and he may not have the excitement, but Stafford has the touchdowns, which ultimately is what matters because you're helping your team score points, which then helps you win the game.
Drake May had a good season, right? Great season. Second Pro Bowl in a row, although he won't be making it. Well, he made it, but he won't be attending, right? Going to the Super Bowl. Took his team out of the Super Bowl, but they had quite possibly the easiest possible schedule, right? They didn't cross Mississippi until going to play the Broncos. And then what do you do against the Broncos? Again, that's playoffs, doesn't count, but they only threw for 86 yards. I feel like he has been carried by his team a lot when he's needed to, which is great. I'm glad that they've been able to do that, but he's done well against quote unquote easier competition. And so, yes, he had a 72% completion percentage, but he only threw 4,300 yards. He only had 31 touchdowns, same amount of interceptions, 31 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And yes, he ran the ball for 450 yards this season and 4 touchdowns. But, and this is an old curmudgeon man opinion, I want my quarterback to stand in the pocket. I don't want him running around. If they're running around, then they're trying to do too much. So although it is helpful, and it's the reason that these quarterbacks are winning is because of what else they can do besides just throw the ball, I just don't think it brings it up to the same eye test pass. Because like you said, it's a popularity contest. You have to pass an eye test as well. Yes, the stats matter, but also how did it look while you were doing it? And I just don't think Drake May looked as good as Matthew Stafford did doing it. The competition was better for Stafford. I mean, everything, right? But you can also say for Stafford, well, his receivers are better than the receivers that Drake May had. And so he was working with what he had to. I've kind of spun myself a whole web here of buts for the other guy, which is kind of what we wanted to do. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think his 72% completion percentage is the biggest thing to hang his hat on. And again, thank goodness it's a regular season award. The problem is will the voters, I do believe votes are already currently in because they have to make the awards and put the names on it and do all that stuff. And so I think that the awards are already due. But if voters let playoff appearances and playoff performances sway their voting, then it's definitely going to go in Stafford's favor. But I think what really matters is that last game of the season. Drake May, 14 for 18, 191 yards, 1 touchdown against the Dolphins. I do believe he came out early in that game. I don't think he played the whole game because they won 38-10. Whereas Matthew Stafford, in his final game this season, they won 37-20. Stafford went 25 for 40, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. So that final 4-touchdown, no-pick game of the season, I think, was the one thing that sealed it for in Matthew Stafford's favor. Although Drake May only had, I think, 5 games where he threw less than 250 passing yards. So the majority of his games, he's throwing the ball 250 or more, which is great. That's not easy. That's not easy by any means, especially with a sling of receivers that he had. But I think to give the award to Stafford for a couple of reasons. One, because it's the age-old adage that, well, Drake May's young. He still has another shot to win it. Stafford's getting old. Maybe he doesn't, so let's just give it to the old guy just to kind of give it to him. And I don't think anybody would be mad about Stafford getting it this year, whereas Drake May still has time to do it. No, they should not do that. If it's just because Stafford's old and Drake May is young, that should not be the reason Stafford wins. I would like to be clear about that. But I think it may weigh on some of these voters.
I agree. I think Matthew Stafford's going to win it, but I do think that either way, whoever wins, that they deserve it. So I'm good with it either way, but I do think that Matthew Stafford is going to be the winner. Before we move on here, go ahead.
I have a bold prediction here. Okay. It's incredibly bold. I think Matthew Stafford wins, and in his MVP speech, he retires.
Oh, that'd be a good way to do it. All right. Moving on to Offensive Player of the Year. The finalists are Drake May, Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Will and I decided that the 3 candidates that are most likely to win the award are Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, and Christian McCaffrey. I don't think Drake May is going to win it, even though he has a legitimate case to win it. But I also think that the fact that Matthew Stafford is not on this list and Drake May is just already tells us who the MVP is, which is kind of ridiculous that they would do that. But anyways, so let's make the case for and against Puka Nacua, Christian McCaffrey, and JSN. We'll start with Puka Nacua. Make your case for and against Puka Nacua to be the Offensive Player of the Year.
Okay, Puka Nacua led the league in receptions. He had 1,715 yards on the season, 13.3 yards per reception, 10 touchdowns because he was getting vultured a bit by Devontae Adams throughout the season. But hey, you know what? That's okay. He also had 80 receptions for first downs, ended the season with 107 yards per game as a receiver. Catch percentage is 77.7%. Yards per target, 10.3. Yada, yada, reading the stat list off. Anybody can read the stat list. I think this kind of goes hand in hand. Rushing yards, he ended with, this is rushing? No, this is receiving. Rushing yards, he had 10 attempts for 105 rushing yards and no rushing touchdowns, which is fine because he's not a runner. He's a receiver. I mean, you watch this guy play and he's got like glue for hands. The ball comes to him, he catches it. I'm not sure the playoffs. He's making extra yards after the play. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that he doesn't just catch it and go down. The age-old Tyler Lockett, which again saves your body. You can play longer, but you don't help your team right now as much. He's catching the ball and he's moving upfield and getting yards after the catch and doing everything he can to make every reception a touchdown. And if he can't get a touchdown, he seems to be mad about it. He also keeps a pretty positive personality on the field. He pops up and he's always smiling. And whether he's smiling to get under the skin of the defense or he's actually smiling because he's happy, he seems to just be having a good time out there. I like everything this guy does. He brings an extra dynamic to the offense of the Rams. He makes it so you have to double cover him, but then when you double cover him, you do Devontae Adams in single coverage, and then there you go there. And so he's a clear number one wide receiver who gets number one targets, but turns them into number one receiver receptions, and then number one receiver yards too. And so he's got everything going for him. I don't think he wins the award, but I think he has a very fair case because without Puka on the Rams this year, they are just not near as good. He did miss 2 games. Yeah, he did miss 2 games, and I think that's going to be a drawback for him, but you can't win them all.
Right. All right, so for me, for the 4 reason for Puka Nacua is he had the second most receiving yards in the league with 1,715, which you already said, which is actually 36.4% of the team receiving yards. He had the most receptions in the league with 129, and he had 6 games this year with 10-plus catches. He had 69 more receptions than the next guy on the team, and he tied Jackson Smith-Njigba with the most 20-plus yard receiving plays this year. He was 3rd in the league with yards after catch, which this will be the reason that he does not win the award because his yards after catch were 666. So he is cursed, and he had the most receiving first downs this season. The reason against Puka Nacua for Offensive Player of the Year is he has Devontae Adams on the other side. When you have Devontae Adams on the other side, it increases your ability to do basically whatever you want opposite from him. So Devontae Adams had 789 yards this year and 14 touchdowns in 14 games. When you have Devontae on the other side of you versus a guy like JSN who doesn't, that's going to be a case against you, although your numbers look great and Puka Nacua is great, but you also have Devontae Adams to make things a lot easier for you because the defense has to worry about Devontae Adams on the other side. So I also don't think Puka Nacua wins this award, but I do think that what he did this season was very impressive. All right, let's move on to Christian McCaffrey. The 4 reason for Christian McCaffrey is because he had 1,200 rushing yards. He had 924 receiving yards for a total of 2,126 yards. He had 10 rushing touchdowns and 7 receiving touchdowns for 17 total touchdowns. He was one of 7 players to have 100 receptions this season, and he was the only running back to do so. And then this is crazy. He had 413 plays where he either ran or caught the ball, which is an incredible amount of ball touching. Christian McCaffrey touched the ball a lot this year. 413 times. That is insane. They pounded Christian McCaffrey into the ground.
That is irresponsible. Kyle Shanahan needs to be questioned about that. He played 4 games last year and got hurt. He played in 4 games. He started the season hurt. Those were at the end of the year. Excuse me. I've got this backwards. He started the year hurt last year and played 4 games throughout the season. Man, I'm remembering his season all wrong. But it was not at the beginning. So he was hurt a lot last year. And then this year, you give him a career high for him of ball touches. That's irresponsible.
My only against case for Christian McCaffrey would be that he averaged 3.9 yards per carry, which was tied for 17th in the league. So there were 38 other players in the league who averaged more yards per carry than he did. But I think his for case heavily outweighs his against case because of how much he produced for that offense. I personally think that Christian McCaffrey is going to win Offensive Player of the Year because of how much he meant to that offense. He was the 49ers offense. He had all those yards, over 2,000 yards combined. He had 17 touchdowns. the guy was just incredible throughout the season, carried the 49ers on his back, got them to the playoffs despite all those injuries. So that's why I think Christian McCaffrey is going to win Offensive Player of the Year. What about you, Will? What's your for and against case for Christian McCaffrey?
I mean, you kind of said it all, but I think the biggest thing, and the reason he is also on the MVP list, is because without Christian McCaffrey, we saw it last year, this team was not near as good. And this year, the entire Niners team was crumbling, except for somehow Christian McCaffrey. I stayed away from this guy in fantasy football. Had no interest in drafting him. Zero. Matter of fact, drafted Acton Genti over him. And man, that's a bad look now.
I ranked him number 2, by the way. You guys didn't listen to me.
No, I did not. Because I was like, okay, well, he's going to play 3 games and he's going to be done for the season because the Niners are just going to have to hand him the ball every time and it's just not going to go well. Except for this year, it did go well. He got handed the ball 311 times, like you mentioned. He got 102 receptions. Yeah, 102 receptions on 129 targets. That is incredibly efficient. 129 targets, 102 receptions. That means every time the ball was coming to him, now not every time, but almost every time the ball was coming to him, he was getting the ball and doing something with it. That is so efficient for him. 2,100 scrimmage yards. I don't know if that's the most in the league this year, but it's got to be darn near close to the most scrimmage yards, if it's not the most.
The only person who could be close to that is Robinson. Let's see. He had almost 1,500 rushing yards, and then he had receiving. No, Robinson did have more yards than him. Not as many touchdowns, though, so he's probably not going to win it.
I mean, he did do it more efficiently.
But his team didn't make the playoffs.
His team didn't make the playoffs, and so that's what really matters. And so, yeah, Bijan had more total yards, but I didn't even have a but. I mean, that's just impressive. I mean, that's just impressive. I mean, I think what's going for Christian McCaffrey, like you said, is more touchdowns. I think more receptions matters, more receiving yards matters. He had more attempts. He did have less rushing yards, but I don't think that is going to play too heavily on it because that's just what happened, right? 413 touches, 2,100 yard scrimmage yards, 17 total touchdowns on the season. I also think he wins it, and I don't think this is the only award he wins this year. He made first team All-Pro. There's not a lot of cases against Christian McCaffrey this year, besides the fact that he played for the Niners, and they should be put under scrutiny for giving him the ball 413 times.
Again, a lot of ball touching.
The next highest, sorry, just in perspective, the next highest this season for touches in one season was Jonathan Taylor, who touched the ball 369 times. McCaffrey was 413. Next highest was 369. Ugh. That's
a lot of ball
relying too heavily on one guy.
Very much so.
When your quarterback is subpar, that's what you have to do.
All right, well, let's move on to JSN. Make your for and against case for Jackson Smith-Njigba for Offensive Player of the Year.
Jackson Smith-Njigba, 119 receptions, so second in receptions, I believe, and first in yards with 1,793. He had 10 total touchdowns, so same as Puka. Less receptions, more yards, same touchdowns. Rushing, he had 36 yards, 36 rushing yards, which again doesn't really matter. First team All-Pro. Puka also first team All-Pro, forgot to mention it for him. He did fumble 3 times, where Puka only fumbled once. McCaffrey fumbled twice. So he fumbled the most out of these guys. But again, it comes down to what he did for his team. I think that matters a lot. Individual yardage, 1,793 receiving yards is so much yards. That's so much. I'm sure you have the percentage of team yardage like you did for Puka.
Yes. 44.3% of the team receiving yards.
That's so many. That's incredible.
Yards. That's incredible.
And so I think he is. I think he's second place. Like, that's just what it is.
I think so too.
It's going to be Christian McCaffrey. In a year where Jackson Smith-Njigba could do no wrong, they shipped off Tyler Lockett, they shipped off DK Metcalf, and said, all right, you, third year, you're up, you're the guy. Yeah, you are the guy now. And he said, yes, sir, may I have another? He did everything for his team he could. Just like Puka, he was fighting for extra yards when he could, but he also played it smart. I don't think he took near as many big hits as Puka did, except for the NFC Championship game, where he took that shot. But then held onto the ball and got up and went, all right, next down. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And so if you're Seattle, you should be batting your chest hard to get this guy the award. I just don't think it's going to happen based on if Christian McCaffrey had 2% less stats, I think JSN wins, but that's just not the way the season went.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think JSN's going to be second in voting. But the reason that JSN should win Offensive Player of the Year is because he was the leader in receiving yards. He had 44.3% of his own team's receiving yards, which is just crazy that it was that high. That's incredible. He had 9 games with 100 plus receiving yards. He had 67 more receptions and exactly 1,200 more receiving yards than the next guy on his team, which is nuts. That's nuts. And also, he doesn't have Devontae Adams on the other side like Puka Nacua does, like we already mentioned. For the against case for JSN, I don't really have much, aside from the fact that he didn't have a double-digit reception game, which I think might actually work in his favor because he had that many receiving yards without double-digit receptions. So he was a bigger play guy. So that's really the only case I have against him. There's not really much of a case against, honestly. Like, the dude was just incredible all season long.
Again, if you're looking at stats, playoffs don't matter here. He had 10 receptions against the Seahawks, against the Rams in the championship game, but playoffs don't matter here. I just can already feel somebody in the comments, well, actually, he had 10 receptions last game in the championship game, regular season award.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's move on to our last one of this episode. We are going to talk a little bit more about some of these awards in the next episode as well before they reveal who wins the awards next week when Avery's back with us. So we'll do like the coach of the year and all that stuff next week. But the last one for today's episode, since we're low on time, is going to be Defensive Player of the Year. So the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year are Will Anderson, Myles Garrett, Nick Benito, Aiden Hutchinson, and Micah Parsons. Will and I determined that the 3 most likely candidates to win the award are Myles Garrett, Will Anderson, and Nick Benito. So we're going to make the case for and against these 3 guys. So we'll start with Myles Garrett, and I'll go first on this one. The case for and against Myles Garrett to win Defensive Player of the Year. For, he had 23 sacks. He broke the single season sack record. He had 6.5 more sacks than Brian Burns, who was the second guy in sacks this season. And after Myles Garrett on his own team, the leader in sacks for the Browns had 6.5 sacks. Myles Garrett had 16.5 more sacks than the next guy on his own team. That is incredible what he was able to do this year. If I had to make an against case for Myles Garrett to win Defensive Player of the Year, is that he needed an extra game to break the sack record. Now, it's not his own fault that he has to play 17 games, but it just doesn't make it seem as cool when the previous record was set in 16 games and he needed an extra game to do it. On top of that, when he did break it, Joe Burrow just laid down and gave him the sack. It's not like Myles Garrett came around the corner and he rocked Joe Burrow from behind and got that extra sack. Joe Burrow just laid down, okay? So it just doesn't make it seem as cool when you think about it in that way. Now, the final case I have against Myles Garrett winning Defensive Player of the Year is his team didn't make the playoffs. If you're not going to give it to Joe Burrow last year, which many people thought you should, if you're not going to give it to Joe Burrow last year, the MVP, because he didn't make the playoffs, why are we going to give Defensive Player of the Year to a guy who didn't make the playoffs? You just can't do it. I get it. One's MVP and one's Defensive Player of the Year, and it's an individual award, but so is MVP. It's not a team award. It's an individual award. So if you're not going to give MVP to Joe Burrow last year, like many people thought he should have been the MVP, why are we going to give Defensive Player of the Year to Myles Garrett when his team did not make the playoffs? Will, if you have anything to add, go ahead.
Yeah, so Myles Garrett played 82% of the defensive snaps for his team. Peeling the curtain back here a little bit, Nick Benito only played 61% of the snaps, and Will Anderson only played 67% of the snaps. Myles Garrett was always there for his team. 82% of the snaps as a defensive end is brutal. That is brutal, especially for that Browns team whose defense was on the field a lot. I mean, they were bad. So to be able to be there game in, game out, as you said, broke the sack record. I wish he'd have done it against Aaron Rodgers. I think that would have been an even sweeter moment. Browns Steelers breaks the record. I do think there's a little bit of the Steelers and Rodgers specifically trying to make sure that, hey, you're not breaking the record against me. And so I think there was a bit of that going on. But he also forced a fumble this year. Forced 3 fumbles this year, had a pass deflection. Again, one pass deflection, but still, as a defensive end, that's not bad. Usually it's the defensive tackles that get those because right up the middle, the ends are coming around the side. I think that he was all around one of, if not the best defensive players. I also think he's going to win it. First team All-Pro again. This would be his second Defensive Player of the Year award if he gets it. And in the last 4 years, he was 5th in 22, 1st in 23, 3rd in 24. And if he wins again this year, he'll be 1st. So this is his 4th year in a row of being top 5 Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So, sorry, my wife is yelling at my children. So I think that I'm a fan of if you break the record, you should win it. Now, that being said, Dallas safety or corner who broke the pick six record.
Oh, DaRon Bland.
DaRon Bland, he did not win it that year, but I think sack record is a bit different than pick six record. So,
but they're both incredible.
I like Miles Garrett. What was that?
They're both incredible.
They are both incredible. I also think it matters, and yes, you made this case that his team didn't make the playoffs, but he plays for the Browns, who are just bad, right?
So he gets a pass.
Sure, he gets a pass, but he's able to do amazing. He's able to do amazing things, break records, almost in spite of his team. Hey, the rest of my team is bad. Yeah, they drafted Mason Graham to go up the middle, and he was great. He was a big help. But still, Myles Garrett, almost in spite of his team, is going out there and having just amazing individual performances. So I like what he's got going on. I think he should win that, and he had a 5-sack game. If you've got 5 sacks in one game against the Patriots, by the way, against the New England Patriots, that is important.
That's
and big.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Will Anderson. Will, you can start on this one. Make your for and against case for Will Anderson for Defensive Player of the Year.
Honestly, we should have started with not Myles Garrett. We should have built up to Myles Garrett, but it's too late. We didn't do that already. I just don't think he measures up. I think he has a lot going for him. 2 fumble recoveries in the season. He had 12 sacks, 54 total tackles overall, which as a defensive end, 54 tackles is actually quite a bit because you're not usually the guy making the play unless it's a run outside and you're able to stop it or you're getting a sack. And so I think that is actually rather important. 54 tackling this season. As mentioned, he only played 67% of the snaps for his whole team, which that Texans defense was so stout. They were rotating people in and out. And so that's just fresh legs are always going to be good. I think going against him, excuse me, sorry, I'm seeing numbers that disagree with other numbers I read. 3, 5, 6, 7. He had 7 forced fumbles in the year. That's the number I was looking for. 7 forced fumbles in the year, which is very good. Coming around the edge, right? Are you disagreeing with me?
No.
Okay. 7 forced fumbles in the year, which is really good. 3 pass deflections, which again isn't saying a lot, but again, defensive end, it's a lot harder to get one. I think he had a great season overall, but I think he was supported more by a good defense, right? You're able to get sacks more when you've got good coverage behind you. And the Texans had good coverage behind them. They had good linebackers, they had good secondary, and so quarterbacks are holding the ball more, and so you're able to get home better. And so your 12 sacks, they like to call those coverage sacks. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but definitely some of them, where the quarterback just can't throw the ball, the pocket breaks down, and he's there to do it. But the fact that he only got 12, I think is a bit of a drawback. I actually think he gets third here. I don't think he gets second. So, great player, like Will Anderson, I just don't. Sorry. This is not it for me.
Yeah, I'll try to say some things that you didn't already say. So the against case for Will Anderson is he didn't even lead his own team in sacks. I don't remember if you said that or not, but he was second on his own team in sacks. He had 12 sacks. The leader on his team was Danielle Hunter with 15 sacks. So he didn't even lead his own team in sacks. However, the for case for Will Anderson, the reason why Will Anderson should win Defensive Player of the Year over Myles Garrett is because he's the best player on the best defense in football. The Texans defense was first in total yards allowed, and they were second in total points allowed. His team made the playoffs because of that defense that he's the leader of, that he's the best player on. This team started 0-3, and the defense is the reason that they were able to finish 12-5 and make it as far as they did. He's the best player on the best defense in football. Now, I know there's an argument to be made for the Seahawks and the Broncos and whatnot, but just numbers wise, again, first in total yards allowed and second in points allowed. That's the best defense in football when you look at the numbers. So that's what I'm going off of. And then according to Pro Football Focus, Will Anderson had the highest pass rush win rate at 26.2%, which is higher than Myles Garrett at 24.6%. So I think there is a legitimate case to be made here for Will Anderson, but I don't think he wins it. I think Myles Garrett gets it.
Before we move on, before I get interneted, the stats I'm looking at here also included playoffs. He did only have 3 forced fumbles in the season. 3 of them were in the playoffs. So
okay,
we'd like to correct my own statement here.
Which is crazy that he was able to do that more in the playoffs than he was in the regular season.
Right. I don't know if I mentioned this though. Will Anderson. Will Benito. That's my bad. Will Anderson also first team All Pro, which didn't matter.
Yes,
because we come to Nick Benito, which you were about to say. Nick Benito not on the All Pro list. Didn't even make second team All Pro this year, which I do think matters when it comes to voting. Right. Broncos defense top 5 definitely. I don't have a lot to say here. He had 14 sacks in the season, 2 forced fumbles, 31 solo tackles. He played in all the games. Did a great job. Outside linebacker, I'm kind of at a loss here. Again, like I said, we started with Myles Garrett. We started with the best. We're kind of working our way out. I just don't. I'm gonna pass it back to you. You've got way more stats and facts and things. I'm trying to fill in Avery's vibe check and role, and I'm just not doing a good job. He only played in 61% of the 61% of the snaps for his team. But again, when you've got a good team, you've got depth, and so that is better for the whole team. Actually, Myles Garrett having to play so many snaps, percentage-wise, is almost a drawback. But at the same time, hey, he was always there for his team. You can kind of make the stats say whatever you want him to say. Same stat, 2 different sides of the argument.
Right. Yeah, I think the case for Nick Benito to win Defensive Player of the Year is also the case against Nick Benito to win Defensive Player of the Year, because he was the leader in sacks on his team that led the league in sacks. So he was the only player on his team with double-digit sacks with 14, but his team overall led the league in sacks. And when you look at the numbers and you take his away, if you take his 14 sacks away, the Broncos still would have had 54 sacks, which still would have been good for the second most sacks in the league. So aside from Benito, the Broncos had 3 other players with 7 or more sacks. They had 4 other players with 4 or more sacks, and then they had 9 other guys who had some sort of stat in the sack category. So the case for Benito for being the leader on the team that led the league in sacks is also the case against him, because that team was just so good overall at getting to the quarterback. So I think it kind of, it's in his favor, but it's also not for the same exact reason. But yeah, I don't think he's winning it. Like we've already mentioned, I think Myles Garrett is winning this award. Do you have anything else to add on this one, Will?
I think something that should be taken into account is in a good thing for Will Anderson, for Nick Benito here, is how much that defense really won them games. It seemed as if time after time, all the way up to and including the playoffs, whoever the quarterback was doing their best to lose the game. Now, I know that's not actually true, but it seemed as if Bo Nix and Jared Stidham were like, yeah, we're just kind of out here doing a thing, and that defense was playing their heart and soul out every single time. I mean, so many of their games were one-score games, except for, the loss to Jacksonville. But so many of their games were just hanging in there, trust your defense games, and as a leader, if not the leader on that defense, putting a trust your defense, the leader on a trust your defense team of, hey, you know what? We're up by 1. We're going to do our best. We're going to punt the ball, give it back to him because our defense is better than your offense. I think that says a lot for him that both Myles Garrett, Will Anderson does have that, but Myles Garrett does not. That team was just bad overall. The bright spot on that team, they had 2 of them. They had Carson Schwarzenegger, which I'm sure we'll talk about eventually, and they had Myles Garrett. They were pretty much the only bright spots in that whole Browns team. Whereas you can look at the entire defensive body of work for both the Broncos and the Texans, and then you can start to pick players out individually.
Okay, so before we close out here, I have one final question for you, Will.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I saw this today. I am against this. I I am truly against this. And I saw the reasoning because of Spygate and Deflategate and yada, 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 yada. And sure, yes, did that help him win games? Did that help him win Super Bowls? Maybe. I mean, people are like, well, of course it did. They cheated. Was it really proven, or were they just penalized for it anyway? I don't think Bill Belichick had anything to do with the deflating of footballs. That was never proven that he did, I don't believe. Spygate, yeah, that was him. But I don't think it takes away from the entire body of work of the man and what he did for the game and to the game. I think this is just a bunch of salty old whites keeping another salty old white out of the Hall of Fame out of pure spite. I think this had nothing to do with actual football. This had nothing to do with actual talent or ability of any kind, because you've seen it before in other sports where when you get caught cheating like that, they void your championship. I mean, not to bring up the grim here, Joe Paterno had like everything he ever did voided. You know what? This man was involved in a bunch of stuff he should not have been involved in. He doesn't get credit for any of that anymore. We're voiding everything. And then NFL never did that. They never voided any of his stats. They never voided any of his wins. They never voided anything that he did. So he still gets credit for all that stuff. So to keep that guy out of the Hall of Fame, I think is absolute garbage.
I agree.
Even if it's just for the first year.
Right, exactly. The fact that Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer is an absolute crime. Absolute crime. Whoever is on that voting committee needs to be fired immediately for not putting him into the Hall of Fame first ballot. That is ridiculous. We were lucky enough to grow up and see that happen, what he was able to do with Tom Brady and the Patriots, win 6 Super Bowls. That is incredible, and that's something that we probably won't ever see again. We're probably not going to see that ever again. What he did was incredible, and he's one of, you could say he is the best coach of all time in the NFL. I know a lot of people could make a case that other coaches are, but he has a legitimate case to be called the best coach in the history of the NFL. And you don't put him into the Hall of Fame first ballot. That is ridiculous. Absolute crime.
It's petty. It's childish. It's what the NFL is turning into, unfortunately, is petty and childish behavior. He offended me, so I'm going to keep him out. And so I don't know. I think it's garbage.
I do too. All right. Well, anyways, actually, I have one more thing to say. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl next week, but I just want to say this. I do not want the Patriots to win the Super Bowl because I am tired of hearing about Stephon Diggs and Cardi B. I think those two human beings are incredibly stupid human beings. Just Stephon Diggs just out there on the boat with all the chicks and the drugs and getting himself into trouble. And then Cardi B's out here cussing out 4-year-olds on social media for picking the Broncos and not picking the Patriots. Like, come on. How incredibly stupid do you have to be to do that crap? I am so sick of hearing about these two. So sick of it. So I'm all for the Seahawks winning this Super Bowl. Go Seahawks.
Me too. Go Birds. And they just beat my team. So that means a lot. I talked a lot about this. And we'll talk more about this next week. But my heart has softened to the Seahawks so much this season. Like, so much. Not just because my son picked a team. Even before that, I was like, I really don't hate this team near as much as I thought. It's weird that I don't spend near as much time with insufferable Seahawks fans. I don't hate this team near as much. Crazy how those two are directly correlated. But yeah, go Birds for sure. I want my team to have lost in the playoffs to the Super Bowl champion. So that's go Birds.
All right. Well, yeah, that's all we got time for on today's episode. But next week, Avery should hopefully be back with us. We're going to talk about the rest of the awards that we did not talk about today. And then we'll talk about the Super Bowl, give a little preview and give some of our thoughts and picks on that Super Bowl, even though we've kind of already said a lot of it. But we'll get Avery's thoughts more so than ours next week. So stay tuned for that. And as always, guys, don't forget to keep your balls played with. We'll see you next time.
Bye now, y'all. Also, Mark Davis' haircut still sucks.